Could it shock you to learn that some of the most visually celebrated cultural regiments in southern Africa are also quietly shaping modern power, discipline, and political influence in ways few openly discuss? The rise of the amabutho is not just a story of shields, chants, and heritage. It is a story of authority, loyalty, and identity colliding with the modern state. From royal ceremonies to moments of national tension, these regiments have re-emerged into public life with renewed confidence and controversy. As you listen, stay with this story until the very end, because what begins as culture slowly reveals something far more complex. And if this kind of deep, unpacked storytelling matters to you, subscribe now and commit to watching this entire journey unfold. At first glance, amabutho appear firmly rooted in history, born in the age of Shaka Zulu as disciplined age-based regiments designed to unite young men, enforce loyalty, and protect the kingdom. Yet history has a way of refusing to stay buried. These formations were never merely military units. They were social systems, political tools, and symbols of masculine duty. When colonial administrations tried to suppress them, the structure survived in memory and ritual. What we see today is not a simple revival but an evolution, shaped by nostalgia, modern politics, and a hunger for order in uncertain times. Think about how quickly symbols gain power when societies feel unsteady. In moments of political distrust and economic strain, people often return to structures that promise discipline and identity. Amabutho tap directly into that instinct. Their uniforms, drills, and public displays communicate certainty without speaking a word. They remind communities of a time when authority felt clear and leadership felt embodied. This is why their resurgence resonates so deeply, especially among the youth searching for belonging in a fragmented world. But the real intrigue begins when tradition steps into public space alongside modern law. In several recent ceremonies, amabutho have appeared not only as dancers or guards of honor, but as organized, disciplined bodies responding to commands. This raises quiet questions about where cultural expression ends and coercive power begins. The state recognizes traditional leadership, yet it also claims monopoly over force. When regiments answer to kings or cultural authorities, the line between heritage and parallel power structures begins to blur. Supporters argue that amabutho are ceremonial, nothing more than custodians of tradition. They point to festivals, royal events, and rites of passage where regiments instill discipline and pride rather than violence. In their view, these formations offer moral grounding, steering young men away from crime and substance abuse. The argument is emotionally compelling: culture as prevention, identity as stability, tradition as social glue. Critics, however, see something more unsettling. They note how quickly disciplined groups can be mobilized, how symbolism can turn into intimidation, and how loyalty to a traditional authority may conflict with constitutional norms. History offers uncomfortable reminders that militias often begin as cultural or protective units before sliding into political instruments. The concern is not what amabutho are today, but what they could become under pressure. One cannot ignore the role of modern politics in this revival. Traditional leaders operate within democratic states, yet retain immense local influence. When political parties court these leaders, amabutho become more than cultural artifacts. They become audiences, symbols, and sometimes leverage. Even without explicit violence, the mere presence of disciplined regiments at politically sensitive moments sends a message. Power does not always need to act to be felt. There is also a generational dimension that complicates the narrative. Many young men who join amabutho speak of purpose, structure, and respect. In communities where unemployment is high and pathways to success feel blocked, the regiment offers a clear role and a sense of honor. This emotional pull cannot be dismissed lightly. When modern institutions fail to provide dignity, older systems often rush in to fill the gap. This is where the story turns uncomfortable and why staying to the end matters. Discipline without accountability can harden into obedience without question. Cultural loyalty can override civic responsibility, and when identity becomes armor, dialogue becomes difficult. If you are finding this exploration eye-opening, this is the moment to subscribe, because the layers only deepen from here, and what follows challenges both defenders and critics alike. Across the continent, similar patterns emerge. From ceremonial guards in monarchies to youth wings attached to liberation movements, the blending of culture and authority is not unique. What makes amabutho distinctive is their deep historical legitimacy combined with modern visibility. They are not fringe actors. They stand at the center of identity politics, carrying the weight of centuries while operating in a constitutional era barely decades old. Legal scholars quietly debate whether existing frameworks are sufficient to manage such formations. Cultural rights are protected, yet public order must be preserved. When regiments train, assemble, and respond to commands, even symbolically, oversight becomes crucial. The absence of clear regulation creates ambiguity, and ambiguity is fertile ground for misuse. Silence in this context is not neutrality but risk. Media portrayal further complicates perception. Images of synchronized movement and traditional regalia circulate widely, often stripped of context. To some viewers, they inspire pride, to others, fear. Rarely do headlines pause to explain the internal rules, the informal hierarchies, or the quiet negotiations between traditional leaders and state authorities. The result is a public conversation driven more by emotion than understanding. Then there is the question few ask aloud: who controls the narrative inside the regiment itself? Authority within amabutho is often unquestioned, rooted in age, status, and tradition. This can foster unity, but it can also suppress dissent. When young members are taught that loyalty is virtue, critical thinking may be framed as betrayal. That dynamic matters deeply in a democratic society. None of this suggests that amabutho are inherently dangerous or illegitimate. It suggests something more nuanced and more challenging. They are powerful social instruments operating in a fragile balance between past and present. Ignore that balance, and you risk romanticizing or demonizing what is, in truth, a complex human system. As the story moves toward its finishing point, the central tension becomes clear. Amabutho are mirrors. They reflect what societies value, what they fear, and what they feel they have lost. When states are strong and inclusive, such regiments remain symbolic. When states falter, symbols search for substance. That transition can be subtle, almost invisible, until it is no longer reversible. The future of amabutho will not be decided by tradition alone, nor by law in isolation. It will be shaped by dialogue, transparency, and the willingness of leaders to define clear boundaries. Cultural pride does not have to conflict with constitutional order, but coexistence requires honesty. Pretending the question does not exist only ensures it will be answered in moments of crisis, rather than calm. If this exploration has shifted how you see ceremonial regiments and the quiet power they hold, stay engaged. Subscribe, watch to the end, and keep questioning the stories that sit just beneath the surface of public life. Understanding these dynamics is not about taking sides. It is about seeing clearly.